Bible history has taught us that over the years that God raises up men to fulfill particular aspects in His kingdom. It seems like every generation we have had men who have been raised up who have sought to specialize in the area of evangelism. If I were to tell you the names of men like Ivan Stewart who developed material, you would recall the areas in which he labored, and he was very successful at that. Our speaker for this afternoon is Rob Whitacre. He's married to Nicole. They have one daughter, Hannah. They have one son, Jared. His education includes San Antonio College, Abilene Christian University, Southwest School of Biblical Studies, where he got a 2-year diploma, and then he also attended the Southwest School of Biblical Studies for a graduate certificate in sacred history. He also attended and received a BA degree from Southern Christian University. He's authored 2 books, The Old and New Testament Simplified, and he's also co-authored Engage. He directs evangelistic and medical missions into Jamaica. He conducts personal evangelism seminars that have been published through World Video Bible School. He's been preaching for the Wilette Church of Christ near Red Boiling Springs since 2007. And he is a private pilot and enjoys taking the brethren on scenic flights around his home areas. We're glad to have Robert with us. He came to MSOP several weeks back and conducted a evangelistic workshop, and our students are still talking about the great benefit they received from that workshop. Brother Rob, come speak to us on the subject of magnifying Jesus through evangelism.
Would you take a pen out just for a minute and a piece of paper, scratch paper? I need you to write something down. We're going to write 4 numbers down. You need a pen, a pencil, just scratch piece of paper. I want you to visualize this with me. So if you'll write 4 numbers down, write the number 2 on a piece of paper. Write the number 2. I want you to look at it. Write the number 0 on a piece of paper. Look at it. Write the number 2. Then write the number 0. Then I want you to write the number 6. The number 6. Just write it down right next to that. And then write the number 9. 9. So you've written 4 numbers. 2, a 0, a 6, and a 9. You said, preacher, why am I writing down the number 2069? Because that's the year 2069. And brethren, if we do not reverse the trend that we have seen pre-COVID, if we do not stop the bleeding and the hemorrhaging in the Church of Christ that we have witnessed pre-COVID, when each year we lose 18,451 church members, where each year we find that 111 churches of Christ shut their door. In the year 2069, we won't be here. In 2069, we're going to call India, we're going to call our Latin American brethren, and we're going to ask them to come plant the Church of Christ in America because we're no longer able to keep our church buildings open. What we're facing right now in this country is the most urgent crisis the Church of Christ has ever seen on the soils of America, the United States. We are seeing the dissolving of the brethren. Churches are closing their doors. If we don't reverse the trend, if we don't change the culture in our local churches, there isn't going to be a Church of Christ for us to attend. And brothers and sisters, there won't be any mission funds to send overseas because we'll need them to come right back here. I'm not going to discuss this afternoon a deep theological discourse for Athens. I'm going to discuss something very simple, something very successful. What I want to do is give you a strategy for success at the local church, and I want to speak to Nazareth. What I want to speak about this afternoon is something every Church of Christ should be doing. The focal point of all that we do should be on training our Christians to seek and save the lost. Speaking about the exaltation of Jesus and exalting the Father. We cannot be like Jesus if we do not evangelize. In Luke 19:10, the Bible said that Jesus came to seek and save the lost. You cannot be like Jesus if we do not take the gospel of Christ and teach our neighbors and those in our own backyard. In John chapter 17, verses 1 and 2, the Bible says, these words spake Jesus, and he lifted up his eyes to heaven, and he said, Father, the hour is come, glorify the Son, that the Son also may glorify thee, as thou hast given him power over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as thou hast given him. There isn't a better way to glorify the Father than for us to take the gospel of Jesus Christ and to evangelize. Brothers and sisters and friends, I come to you from the house-to-house, heart-to-heart school of evangelism. 3 years ago, I stepped out of full-time work. My family started a school under the umbrella of house to house, and our mission is to go from church to church and train the saved to teach the lost. We've hit 23 congregations this year. Last year, we hit 32 churches. The results have been incredible. When you give a congregation a strategy for success, when you train the local members, I'm not talking about the preacher, and I'm not talking necessarily about the elders. I'm talking about harnessing the power of the pew and allowing the brethren to do the work that they need to do, training them how to do it. Jesus said in Matthew 10 and 16, "Be ye therefore as wise as serpents and subtle as doves." The Lord did not send out the 70 in the limited commission without giving them a strategy. He told them exactly how to do it. We need to train our church members how to evangelize. In 2 Timothy 2 and 2, the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. That's just not a verse for the Memphis School of Preaching. That's a verse for every single church of Christ. You cannot farm your evangelism out to a school. You can't farm it out to your preacher, and you can't farm it out to the elders. We must train our church members how to evangelize. And brothers and sisters, when you do, the results are incredible. What we have seen as we have continued in the training of churches is a complete turnaround. We have seen churches literally go from 60 to 80 to 100. We've seen churches, preachers who are about to give up, call and write us and say, "Rob, we haven't seen this much evangelism in all of our life combined." I was just at Mount Pleasant, Texas not long ago, and we trained a congregation there, and boy, I tell you what, that church just took off. 8 weeks, 8 baptisms. I'm going to talk to you this afternoon about practical things you can do. Brothers and sisters, don't be satisfied with mediocrity. Don't be satisfied with just trying to get back to where you were. If we do not have a cultural change, I'm not talking about doctrinal. We don't need to change the doctrine. The doctrine is 2,000 years old. It doesn't need any additions. It doesn't need any subtractions. It doesn't need any substitutions. What we need to do and what we need to get our members to understand is we must refocus our thinking. We need to get churches of Christ to focus on soul winning. I don't know if you've taken any time lately to look at the face of the Church of Christ. A poll was done recently, and it was done by one of our Christian colleges, and they reached out to just churches of Christ, and they wanted to know, what do our demographics look like? I want to share them with you this afternoon. 3/5 of our church members are 50 years and older. Let me say that again. 60% of our church members have the age of 50 years or older. Friends, we're a gray-headed church. We have serious work to do, and it's not too late. There's still time for us to reverse the trend. There are still things that are not being done that need to be done. We must get our elders in the local churches to focus on the mission. We have so many elderships that are so distracted on every program under the sun. We're running 20 different works in our local church, and none of them are producing souls. In fact, when I sit down with elders, and I do this on a weekly basis, I've done it 23 times this year. I ask elders, tell me about the works you're doing at the local church. And they, of course, they like to talk about, their graduation banquet. It's May. We got to talk about, the pew packers. We've got to talk about vacation Bible school and gospel meetings. And I'm all for all of that. And they list all the things, Bible camps and teachers' workshops and teachers' appreciation days and the seniors' day and, Bible bingo for the elderly and all the various things we're doing. None of them necessarily sinful. In fact, I endorse a lot of them. But then I ask this question: how many souls are being saved? How many souls are we reaching? Are we reaching the lost? Friends, every work of the Church of Christ needs to be funneled through soul winning. We edify to save. We're benevolent to save. We are a soul-saving body. Jesus came to seek and save the lost. We're not a country club, and we're not the Lions Club. This isn't the Rotary Club, and we're not the local benevolent center. Our mission, Ephesians 3, 9, and 10, says to this intent, that now to principalities and powers in heavenly places, it might be made known by the church the manifold wisdom of God. The purpose of the church is to make known to the world the mission of the gospel, to make known to the world Jesus, to magnify the Father by us teaching the world about Jesus. And brothers and sisters, if we fail in that mission, you may have a great big church building. You may have 20 programs. You may have the best graduation banquet the church has ever had. But you have failed. Our mission is singular. Our mission is Matthew 28. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the world. And I can tell you this without exception, our churches do a fantastic job taking that commission and going all over the world. And we'll go to New Zealand, and I've been there. We'll go to Latin America and Panama, and I've been there. That's where I met my good friend Marlon. We'll go over to Scotland. We'll go all over India, and we've done an incredible job taking the gospel while our local communities are dying. We'll spend thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars going overseas, and I have found it in many churches there's hardly a dollar being spent in local mission work. Until we focus on our hometown, our home areas, until we begin to develop a strategy to reach the lost in our communities, churches of Christ are going to continue to die. They're going to continue to close one by one. Now, I love it that Brother mentioned Ivan Stewart, what a great work they did. Brother, I was born August 19th, 1974. And I was born in what I call into the golden years of the church. Did you know when I was born, there was a member of the Church of Christ in this country for every 84 people? One out of every 84 people in this country was a member of the Church of Christ. This nation prospered because of the Church of Christ. Don't fool yourself. This nation prospered because the gospel prospered. This nation prospered because Jesus was exalted in the Church of Christ. When you're a member of a community or a nation where one out of every 84 people is a member of the Church of Christ, you've got something. Brothers and sisters, we're far from it now. What we have seen, I inherited the golden years of the church, and I am ashamed to admit this, my generation has let the church down. We have become so inwardly focused. We're great at cleaning aquariums. We're terrible at fishing for men. We're great at having inward programs. We have more programs in churches of Christ than any time in our history. We have more technology than we've ever had. We have better looking tracts and better looking literature than the church has ever known. But we've never been worse off. I am begging my brethren, please focus your efforts on soul winning. Please help train the church members. We have an army of 1 million Christians in this country, and they need trained. They need to be showed how to do it. But I'm convinced, and I hate to say this because I love my fellow preachers, that we've got preachers that can preach to crowds of 5,000, but they can't do a Bible study with one. We have in our pews preachers in our pulpits that I'm not so sure can do a Bible study. Dear friends, we don't need any more theologic and academic exposures. What we need is practical Bible teaching, helping people know Jesus, doing simple things. The gospel's not complicated. Don't ever forget that when Jesus chose those who are going to represent him, he got a fisherman. Jesus went out and got commoners. And I think too many times we have brethren who are more captivated by the universities and the theologians and the academics than they are by the simplicity of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's why we need to get back to the Bible. Brothers and sisters, did you know the average church member has heard 4,000 sermons, and they have sung 20,000 songs, and they have been led in prayer 8,000 times, and they have led zero people to Christ. And we wonder why our numbers look like they do right now. Right now in America, there's one Christian for every 300 of us. We went from 1 to 80 to 1 to 300 in a matter of 40 years. Now, that's a reversal. It's a complete reversal of the trend that if we go back, for instance, in 1906 and 7, and we go from 1906 and 7 to 1947, what we see is the numbers went from 1 to about 290 to 1 to 80. It's a complete reversal of the trend. And so it is with great import this afternoon that we listen to the signs, that we see them, that we don't ignore them, that we don't pretend we're not in a very tragic condition right now, but that we make some changes. And I hope in my lecture this afternoon, I'm going to give you 10 things you can do. These are what we teach in our School of Evangelism. Our school is not brick and mortar. My family literally travels the country. We go from Florida to New Hampshire, from Alaska to California. We crisscross in between. 23 congregations this year, 32 congregations last year, and yes, during COVID. And you can evangelize during COVID. There's no reason why members of the Church of Christ should not be evangelizing during COVID, but I'm afraid we stopped. And I'm afraid many of us didn't do it at all. And so, yes, this afternoon I want to give you 10 things you can do. This is the strategy we teach at the school. And this is why there are churches that are finding that evangelism works in their backyard. And I love it when I hear from my brethren said, Rob, we didn't even have to go to India. Now, I'm all for going to India. I think we should go there. But you can baptize people here. You can baptize people in your community. There are still people searching. And I'm going to show you a bunch of them this afternoon. It was Winston Churchill who once said, he who fails to plan is planning to fail. You know, we have more plans for foreign mission work than we do local mission work. And I've been in the meetings. I've seen the boards. I've seen the elderships. Man, we've got orphanages, hospitals, schools of preaching, Bible schools. We've got congregations, 5,000, to build one. I mean, we are organized. We got team builders going everywhere, helping to establish churches. And when we talk about a local plan, we don't have it. We got a preacher. That's not your local plan. Your preacher is not the evangelist of the church. And I'd never take that title. You give it to me, I give it back. I'm not the evangelist of any congregation. I'm a evangelist. You're all evangelists. The denominational model that says that our preachers are responsible for the evangelism of the church is a failing model. It doesn't work. Evangelism is an individual work in every church member. The Great Commission was given to every disciple. Every Christian has the responsibility to be a soul winner. So if you want to write these things down, I'm going to give you 10, and I'm going to have to move fast. Number one, you got to have the materials to do the job. I cannot tell you how many churches of Christ. We've got about 100 congregations enrolled in our school currently right now. It's a 52-week school. We'll provide you week-to-week curriculum. I'll come and I'll train you. And when I get there, one of the questions I'm going to ask is, where is your evangelism material? I don't have time to tell you about all the answers that I've gotten through the years, but I want to share just one. I had one elder come up to me and he said, Preacher, he says, we knew you were coming and we weren't going to be embarrassed, so we got them. And so he said, we ordered them. I said, well, brother, I'm glad you ordered them. Where are they? He said, follow me. So I followed him down the long hallway, and he brought out the ring of keys. You guys ever seen the ring of keys before? He brought out the ring of keys, and we started going through them. We finally found the key that opened the door. We walked in, turned the light switch on. In the back of the room, there was a locker. He says, I think they're in the locker. We walked to the locker, and I said, brother, well, let me see the evangelism tools. It was locked. Don't worry, ring of keys. We brought out the ring of keys. We opened it up. He pulled that back to the Bible. He said, Preacher, see, we were prepared. I said, brother, I have one question. I said, why are the evangelism materials locked in a room and locked in a locker? He said, we were afraid someone might get them. Brethren, isn't that the point? Do you know what I find in most churches? You know where evangelism materials, if they have any at all, it's buried in the preacher's office. It's buried in the library. If you ran your business like that, you'd be bankrupt. Put your product out where people can get it, and you got to have it. We need Bibles. We need Back to the Bible, Open Bible Study. We need Jewel Miller. We need Does It Matter? We need the materials to evangelize. And I just have a sneaky suspicion that every congregation represented here this afternoon, you got plenty of salt and pepper. You got all the forks and knives and spoons a man could ever want. You got the tablecloths and you got the tables. You got the chairs and the refrigerator. You got the microwave. And if a sister came to you and said, the microwave went off, there would be no elders meeting. You'd say, go get one from Lowe's and have it delivered. Churches are equipped. Churches are well equipped. We could open a soup kitchen and be successful. But most churches don't have the material to do Bible studies. They got to order it from Gospel Advocate. We got to order it from Christian Family Bookstore. We got to call somebody, Glad Tidings. We got to call them, say, I need a Bible study set. My friends, the first thing you can do is equip the saints. A soldier cannot go out into war if he does not have the equipment to fight. A fisherman cannot fish without the equipment. And churches of Christ can't do their job if they don't have the equipment to do it. Brethren, I don't care what you use. We have so many good tools out there. Now, I'd recommend Back to the Bible. It's simple, scriptural, successful. But get whatever you want. Just get it. Make sure the brethren have access to it. Number 2, place it in a highly visible spot. Put it out there when the brethren can get it. One of the first things we're going to ask when I leave, I'm going to ask within 1 week, send me the picture of your evangelism center. I want to see a picture of your table. I want it covered in evangelism materials, and I want it out there where the brethren they'd have to trip over it to get out of the building. I don't want it in the closet. I don't want it locked up in the library. I want it out there where everybody can see it. I want to make sure that brethren have access to it. I want to make sure that brethren don't have to ask the preacher to go to his office after Sunday service to get a Bible study. You put it out there and remind the brethren constantly it's there. I had one preacher, and I'd finished the seminar, and he said, Rob, we got all the materials. He said, man, I was so excited. He said, so I put the table out, and we do this all over the country. It's called the evangelism table. I know you think it's, so well, surely something this simple, would it make a difference? You'd be surprised. Just let the brethren have access to it. Brethren aren't going to use what they can't get to. He says, so I put it out there. He says, I organized it. And we had the nice, table. And he says, I came back a few days later, and it was gone. And I said, well, brethren, that's exciting. The brethren were hungry. He says, oh, no, preacher. He says, I suspected something was up. He says, so I put it out again. He said, I had some more material, back in the missions room. So I put more material out. He said, and I waited. And a couple of days later, it was gone. He says, so I called one of the elders. I said, brother, where is the evangelism material so people can do Bible studies? He said, oh. He said, now, when we built this $2 million facility, now, we asked for suggestions as to what in the foyer. He says, and some of our ladies went through, that wasn't on the list. And they said it really didn't match the decor. So we decided to put it in the coat closet. And he said, well, they're the elders. If they want to put the evangelism materials in the coat closet, I can't stop it. So he said, I got into the pulpit that night, and I preached on evangelism materials in the coat closet. He said, and after the sermon, I sat by the coat closet. He said, do you know how many members walked in the coat closet to get the materials? None. May I suggest tonight, brothers and sisters, if we can't put evangelism materials out in our beautiful foyers, because it doesn't match the decor, sell your building. Because the purpose of the church is to teach people the gospel of Christ. And if we cannot equip the saints and get it out there where they can get it, we shouldn't even be here. I was appalled. I said, surely that was a outlier. In 2019, I had 3 preachers tell me a very similar story. Now, Rob, we couldn't get it out there like you suggested, but we've got it in the library. How often do the members in the church go to the library? Not often, unless you got the one like you've got. Most of the times, it's not being used hardly at all. Get it out there where people can see. Number 3, train them. Brethren, train them how to do it. It's your job. If you don't train your church members how to do a Bible study, you'll be the only one doing it. And if you're good, if you're a preacher and you're good at it, that's your talent. Not every preacher's talent is a personal Bible study, I'll be honest. But for most of them it is. And if you really work at it, at best you'll maintain the church, at best. If you don't get your church members out there doing Bible studies, you will fail. There's no way you can do the work of a congregation on your own. And so we must train the church members. We must equip them. Give them here's what we recommend at the school. You pass out back to the Bible to every person on Sunday morning. So every person gets it. Get in the pulpit, and if you're enrolled in our school, we're going to provide all this training tools for you. We'll give you professionally designed PowerPoints. Just preach it. Just let them fill it out. You'll be shocked at what might happen. You'll be surprised at the results that you see when church members, for the first time in their life, feel enabled to do a Bible study. You might see local growth. Instead of having church members bicker about things that have no eternal consequence or reward, they'll be focused on the greatest mission in life. The best way for elders to find peace in the local church is get them busy in the Lord's work. Show them what's important. Lead them. Get the preacher up there and train them how to do it. Who opens a business and buys equipment but doesn't train their employees how to do it? I'll tell you who does that, a bankrupt business. That's who does it, a business that goes bankrupt. And that's what's happening in our churches. Yes, I find it all the time. Stacks of open Bible studies, old Jewel Miller film studies. I find all this literature, and it's not being used. Of all the things we should be training our members to do, it should be this. Brethren, our God, listen to this carefully, is an offensive God. Our God is offensive. Just read the book of Joshua. He's always on the offense. And when brethren get on the defense, just read the book of Judges and you'll find out what happens. You see, God fights for those who fight for Him. And if you choose not to fight, He won't fight your battles for you. Dear friends, He'll let the Church of Christ continue to hemorrhage members if you won't work. If we'll pick up the sword and we'll fight for God and we'll make evangelism the most important work of the church, you will never outwork Him. Too many of our churches are distracted by so many things that are not focused on soul winning. Number 4, you got to promote an evangelistic atmosphere in your church. You got to use the tools God gave you. Dear friends, God gave us tools to attract people, tools to help people, and create an atmosphere where evangelism just fills the building. I want to talk about one of those tools. Go to Acts 2:47. I'll show it to you. I didn't see it. I went to school preaching. I preached for 10 years and I didn't see it because I was focused on one thing: praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. I was focused on added. And I know this, and I preached it all my life, that any church you can join is not the church of Christ, because the church of Christ is a church God adds you to. And we need to preach it, and we never should forget it. But in Acts 2:47, the Bible says, praising God and having the favor of the people. Dear friends, the first century people loved the first century church. It was a church that developed the favor of the people. Why did the people love the church? Just read Acts 4. It was a benevolent church. It was a giving church. It was a church that cared about people. The Pharisees didn't care. The Jewish Sanhedrin didn't care. The scribes didn't care. But the church of Christ cared. I'll tell you, one of your biggest tools, one of your best tools for evangelism is, you're going to be surprised. You know what it's called? Benevolence. And you know, for most churches, we have, benevolence is like an albatross around the neck. We don't like it, because we've been taken advantage of so many times. Have you ever noticed, Nathan Franson, that they always run out of gas in your parking lot? And I don't know about you, but they're always going to California, probably going to New York when they run out of gas in your parking lot. But they're always running out of gas, and people always need, they always call you when it's cold, and I need my light bill paid. Can I share with you something you can do to turn that into a Bible study? Because most benevolent works in churches produce no Bible studies. The next time someone calls you and says, do you pay off mortgages? Yes. Now hold on to your wallet. I know, elders, this is a hard one. Do you pay off light bills? Yes. Do you pay off automobiles? Be glad to. Whatever it is they ask you to do, you do it. You say, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. Now, watch this. Sir, when can I get there? I said, we do it every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and we can't wait to see you. Yeah, we do it every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. We can't wait to see you walk in the doors. What's your name now? And people say, well, surely, preacher, that won't work. Try it. What I want you to do is, the next time someone asks for benevolent help, you tell them we do it at 9 o'clock during Bible class every Sunday morning. And when they walk in those doors, you ought to have a church member equipped with Back to the Bible. You take them to a room and you do a Bible study. Brethren, if you can't do a Bible study during Bible class, you've missed everything. I've heard say, you can't miss Bible class to do a Bible study during Bible class? And brethren, we need to take benevolent requests and turn them into Bible studies. You are not going to solve world poverty at the Church of Christ. We are not the local soup kitchen. Jesus said the poor will always be with you. Benevolence is not a separated work of the church. Dear friends, if it is, then what you are is a soup kitchen, and you are defined what Jesus said. The poor will always be with you. You are never going to take care of world poverty. Here's what we can do. We can feed them with the bread that never ceases. We can give them the water that never stops. We can give them the food that ever gives. We can sit down with them and do a Bible study. You say, well, preacher, are you going to be benevolent? Absolutely. When we finish that Bible study, you say, my elders want to talk to you, and the elders can help in any way they can. But we're tying evangelism to benevolence. Now, I could sit here an hour and talk to you more about that. There's so many different ways we can do that, but I got to move on. It's amazing what happens, by the way, when you do this. See, people ask, preacher, does it work? Let me be very clear to the audience. If it doesn't work, I wouldn't be talking about it. I get brethren literally every week to call me, someone has a new idea. Everybody has an idea of how to evangelize. I'll listen. I listened to one man recently for 45 minutes. He told me about his new plan. When I was finished, and he had invested a lot of time in this and his own money, I had one question. I always have one question. Tell me what it produces. I want to know what the bottom line is. How many Bible studies and baptisms? He said, well, we haven't had any yet after 2 years. And thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours being spent. If you ran your business like this, you'd be out of business. Dear friends, if it doesn't produce, don't do it. But I'm talking about things that do produce. These are God-given things. The Church of Christ and Jesus was benevolent, not because he needed to cure all the medical conditions of the earth. He wanted to cure them. He's the great physician. He's the healer of the soul. And Jesus wanted to give them the healing balm of Gilead, the blood of Jesus that washes away sins. And we've got to focus on it. And if you'll do that, you'll baptize. I promise you. Boy, I wish I had time to tell you about some of these. This is the crux of the whole lesson. I want you to focus on this one. Get your pen out because I'm going to give these to you. You have got to focus your church on producing contacts. You want to glorify God? Then you need people. Brethren, we're a church of people. We don't sit in our offices and spend all of our times brushing up on the latest theories. You need to get out and work with people. The Church of Christ is a body of people, and you need contacts. You have no contacts, you've got nothing. Let me give you the evangelism model. Write this down. I'm going to give it to you quick. Number one, you need contacts. You got no contacts. Number two, you got no prospects. What's a prospect? A prospect is a contact that you prospected. You see, you got to prospect contacts. You got to work on them. You got to till them up. And prospects produce Bible studies. And when you do Bible studies, do you know what that produces? It produces baptisms. And do you know what baptisms give you? New converts. You'd be surprised at how many churches I show up and I sit down. My favorite session is the one you'll never see. It's my elder session. It's when it's all over. I sit down with elders. I said, do you want to enroll? I haven't had a congregation say no yet. Then I ask him the next question. I start talking. I said, do you have a new converts class? No. Why don't you have a new converts class? We have no new converts. You mean you're a Church of Christ and you have no new converts? Do you realize what that means? Because if you have no new converts, you got a dying church. Evangelism is the heartbeat of your church. Brothers and sisters, every Church of Christ ought to have a new converts class. It ought to be one of the most basic things you do. Watch this. Contacts produce prospects. Prospects produce Bible studies. Bible studies produce baptisms. Baptisms produce new converts. And new converts produce growing churches. Someone asked me recently, how did COVID affect your work? It didn't. It made it even more. It made it even more productive. 32 congregations last year. We went from church to church. We just kept training. And dear friends, I want you to know something about that, because if you don't evangelize, and I don't care if it's COVID or whatever else, your church will die. In the month of January 2020, my family went out and we started doing our training seminars. And we went to Florida, Sarasota, Florida. I had 11 churches showed up. It was a great big audience. And I had one question for that church. I said, I want a showing of hands. And I'm talking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, cream of the crop Christians. People don't take off time from work and get hotel rooms if they're not committed. I want to know how many of you in the audience have a method for teaching someone the gospel. And do you know how many people raise their hands? 10. Brethren, we have serious problems. We went from that church and we went all over. We went out to Texas, we came back. We went out to Kentucky, came back. Went on to Georgia and Alabama. Then we ended up in North Carolina about the middle of March. Hey, Rob, haven't you heard? Heard what? He said, we're shutting down. I said, I didn't know. And they said, you got to shut down. My sister called me on the way home. She says, Rob, she says, don't you know? She says, you got to store up. She says, have you got any toilet paper? I said, toilet paper? She said, you got to get some. He says, I'm in Murfreesboro and there's long lines. And so I pulled into the DG like a good, Tennessean would. I pulled into the DG. And the wife, Nicole, said, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting toilet paper. And she started laughing at me. She's not laughing now. And I came out with a card, a toilet. I got everything they had. I put it in my car. My kids were laughing at me. And they said, oh, Dad's off his rocker. I say this for this point. Brethren, from the month of January 1st to March 15th, we had a baptism reported to us every single day. Every day a church in roll called and said, Rob, we've had a baptism. We're almost at 2 right now. I can't wait to get to the end of the year and see where it's at. From March 15th to the middle of May, how many baptisms do you think were reported? 0. I reached out, and all my preacher friends would say, Rob, we're not even at church. Or those who are at worship, we're not, Brothers, can you imagine it? For a period of 2.5 months, we were so focused on saving the physical lives of people, and I'm glad we were. I just wonder how many people went into eternity unprepared. And what did we do? Fear not him that can kill the body but can't kill the soul, but fear him that can take both body and soul and cast them into hell. Brothers and sisters, there is a more dangerous disease than COVID ravaging our land. It's called sin. And we better take the gospel and teach them. That better never happen again. I hope we never look back in our history in this country and say the Church of Christ shut down and we didn't do Bible studies. There should have been more Bible studies going on during that time than the history of this nation. You had the attention of everybody around you. Produce contacts. You have no contacts, you got nothing. I don't know a better work in the Church of Christ in this country for producing contacts in house to house. Brethren, I was a local preacher for 23 years. I step out of the pulpit. I can't be local anymore. I literally am traveling every week. A brother came up and said, where do you live? I said, the Holiday Inn Express. I was serious about that. Because that's literally where we live. And we just go from place to place. And I'm telling you, when I was a preacher locally for 23 years, we baptized somebody every single year because of that. Since I've been at Jacksonville, where Alan Webster preached, when I got there, I said, I've got to practice it somewhere. I'm a terrible teacher if I don't practice what I preach, right? So I'm going to evangelize here in Jacksonville. And that's what I did. We would baptize 3 to 6 people, about 6 people actually a year just from that. They're not going to jump in your baptistry. But if you use it right, you know what I found? As I thought everybody knew how to use house to house. Boy, was I wrong. 90% of the churches I go to have zero idea how to use this work. One of the things we do is train you. See, there are so many different things that you can do. You know, I was at a congregation recently, and they've been using house to house for years. I said, brethren, I've got your house to house. I said, let's pretend I'm a visitor. Let's pretend I know nothing about your church, and I'm going to get it. So here I am, Rob, all right? And it said, such and such Church of Christ. I said, okay. I said, oh, I'm interested. No phone number. No email address. And I was at another church. I said, what would happen if I called this number? Oh, you get an answering service. I just have a question. If you owned an insurance business and you put your flyer out there with your phone number, and every time you tried to call it, you got an answering service, do you think you'd buy from there? When you put a phone number on house to house, it better reach a human being. When you put an email address on there, you better have an answer within 24 hours. Then on the bottom of it says services offered. Do you know what they had under services offered? Nothing. Can I tell you one thing? Let me give you one thing. Boy, if I could give 100% money back guarantee, I'd give it in this pulpit, but I can't do that. But it's as close as I can do. If you'll do this, you'll get a baptism, at least one, from this one thing. You put on that house to house, you put this free transportation. I promise you someone's going to call. And they're going to say, well, I don't have a car. I don't drive well at night. If you can't baptize that person who calls you, quit. Dear friends, when a person calls you and says, I need a ride to the church, that is God laying you a prospect in your lap. You didn't have to knock a door and you didn't have to do anything to get it. They've called you. I don't have time to go over all of it. But I know if you do it right, you'll get this. This is during COVID. And I know I didn't get any calls. My family decided we're just going to evangelize. So we just kept having Bible studies. And we met with people and actually studied with them. We sat down at a table, we opened up the Word of God, and we studied the Word of God. And when you do that, it produces just about every single. That couple right there they had been getting house to house for 20 years. I can't tell you how many people we've baptized this last year because their church was closed. They called, my church is closed. Thank God. Let their churches close. One lady called and she says, I've been going to the Jehovah's Witness church and it's been closed. I said, keep it closed. I said, bring them all here. And we did Bible studies and we baptized her. Her name's Tony Adam. If you'll learn how to do it, that's what you get. I went to one door. I said, ma'am, my wife, Nicole, always bring your wife, ladies. I tell you what, because you're kind of scary, you know. And so she opens up, her name's Brenda. She opens up the door, and she said, hello. I said, ma'am, my name is Rob, my wife, Nicole. We're from, from house to house, and we wanted to deliver the materials you requested. She had requested marriage materials. Do you know what most churches do when someone requests materials? You know what they do? They mail it. Do not mail requests. Go to their door and knock on it. If you'll do that, you're this much closer. This much closer. I'm looking at her. I said, ma'am, you asked for some marriage materials. Did you just get married? She said, oh, yes, I did. And I said, wonderful. I said, have you just moved here? She said, just moved here about 6 weeks ago. I said, well, ma'am. And she said, my name's Brenda. I said, well, my name's Rob. This is Nicole. And Brenda, I've got this material. And she looked at me. She says, well, you could have just mailed it. I said, I couldn't have met you if I did that. She said, well, you're right. I said, well, tell me a little bit more about your situation. She was telling me about it. And we talked for 5 minutes, and she finally stopped. And she said, sir, I got a question for you and your wife. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, do you know anything about the Bible? I said, just a little bit. And she said, well, good, because my husband knows nothing about the Bible. Daniel, get off the couch over there. That man's been on the couch ever since he got home. I don't know what he does all day long. Get off the couch. Daniel, get over here. She brought Daniel over to our door, and she looked at us, and she said, that man knows nothing about the Bible. Daniel, we're going to teach you the Bible. And I said, when do you want to start? She said, how about tomorrow? That one knock on the door, we baptized, and we baptized, and we baptized, and we baptized. That's the work of the church. And I know you think your theological discourse and academic studies on fasting are going to save a lot of souls. And I'm not opposed to all these deep studies. I think we need men who know this stuff. But brothers and sisters, we need an army of soldiers in our pew who are trained to do Bible studies. And if we do that, if we do these basic things, the church of Christ can grow again. I've seen it. Last year, my family started. I called Covington. Covington's not far from Memphis. I talked to one of their elders. And I said, brother, I said, I can't stick in my house anymore. I said, I got to train. He said, Wayne said, you come, Rob. He said, I brought my family. He said, the elders might be the only ones there, but you come train. Well, I got there, about 100 people showed up, and we trained. And we crisscrossed the country twice. We went to Idaho, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, and at the end of the year, God had blessed the Lord's church with 371 baptisms during COVID. If you want to know more about our school and how we can help train your church, come see me. Brethren, we're sick right now, and we have got to turn the tide. We have got to hyper-focus on soul winning. I'll be in Cordova June 6th. Is that right, Bruce? June 6th, I'm coming up. I'm going to train that church. Bruce came to our training seminar with students. I don't know how many you've baptized since then, Bruce, but it's been amazing. I can't wait till I get to Cordova. We need to train our churches how to grow. The status quo doesn't work. Thank you for your time.